Welcome to Media Monsters Podcast. I'm Danny Galvez.
And I'm Jeremy Schreifels. Here we are for another Wednesday. Wonderful conversation for all you media monsters.
It's gonna be good. And you came back with some different perspectives. You got to go to Ireland.
Yeah, we got to hang out over the pond on an island. Wasn't Long Island, but it was an island for just over a week. And it was a different experience, a different pace, I think, which is unique to what we experience here on a normal week. But one thing that I really noticed was just like how they treat media and how it's a little bit different. So we thought we'd give our listeners a little perspective or a little kind of small sneak peek into what that might look like and how it might be different.
I think that's great. I'm really curious, Jeremy, because I think, and you bring up a very good point. Like we're always rush in America. We're always like big, flashy, now, got to do it now, gonna do it now, right? They're just programming us. I'm like, why am I buying all this shit? I don't need it.
Yep.
And when you're sitting at home and you're like, babe, for the last 28 days, we've had 4 Amazon box average per day show up at our house. What are we buying? Like, what is this? And I think like that says a lot about, our consumerism, and we assume here in the United States that everybody's the same around the world. So like, it sounded very pleasant the way that you described it. I saw your pictures too on social media. By the way, if you're not following Jeremy, you need to follow him, and make sure you follow Road to 99 too, because that's probably not going to be the first country he visits within this next year. So like, tell us about the feel, the flow, the people, and kind of set the tone for like what that was like over there.
Well, I think the first thing is like it rains there a lot. And it's cool. And by cool, I mean temperature. So like 66 to 73. Like that's just like a normal day there pretty well year round, which is just interesting. But what I thought was interesting inside of that was just the pace that people moved. They're just like, whatever, it's just raining. Like here, we like people leave the streets or they drive like maniacs or they don't know how to drive, which is even more interesting. But like, it's just like, whatever, we stand in the rain, everybody's soaking wet together. And that was so interesting to us when we like just the first day, we were so drenched, like our clothes from head to toe, inside and out, were just gone. But like what we learned that first day was like, this is just part of it. Like we were watching everybody and they weren't freaking out. They weren't running. They weren't puddle jumping. They weren't nothing. They're just like going about their day like we would if it was 75 and sunny, right? And we're walking down, the boardwalk. And so I thought that was super interesting to start. And then we're like, oh, okay, so this is what we have to deal with every day. Well, fortunately, it wasn't like that every day, but it's kind of like Florida, where you were guaranteed it was going to rain a couple of times through the day. You just never know when, because you're on an island. And one day we did a bus trip from east to west, which was only like 3.5 hours. So imagine whatever a 3.5 hour drive is, that's all the way across the island, east to west. And so that was interesting because the weather changes so quickly because it's an island on the ocean, or at least on one side. And so that was super interesting. The other thing as it pertains to media is just like, there's not all these big flashy billboards and LED lights and flashing. It's not constant visual assault on your person. And I'm like, oh, well, this is interesting. I enjoy this. Now, on the flip side of that, the streets are extremely narrow and the buildings are tall. So like if you're in a city area, it almost like you start to feel a little claustrophobic because it's like there's no escaping it because they're, 2-3 stories high, which they made the joke over there that their skyscraper was towering over the city and it was 8 stories. Like that was a big building. So just to give you a little perspective, it's not like they had 30 floor skyscrapers everywhere. However, like when you got into an area, like you felt confined. It was like literally the definition of concrete jungle.
Mm-hmm.
But these are concrete jungles that were built in 1400, 1500, 1600. These buildings are older than we are.
Lots of history. That's did you what did you see as it pertains to, I mean, like, as a tourist, like obviously it's not like, it's different when you go to Mexico, because Mexico is very like in your face, flashy, push, 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 and
Mhm.
they like to drag you by your ankle. No, no, sir, I can help you over here. Come with me. And but
Yeah.
they've got stuff all over the place. But how did they promote that they've got castles and stuff like that? And was it real subtle? And
It's everything's really subtle, and like you actually have to work to find things. Like it's not like big flashy things, you know,
Mhm.
like we did like a hop on, hop off tour bus, which was great because then you could just sit on a bus for an hour and a half and take a whole tour of the whole city and learn all, it's guided or whatever. And then you can get off and if you like and get back on whenever you want. A big thing of it over there is, mass transit. Not that there isn't plenty of cars driving, but buses and trains and trams, like that gets us places. And the two things that are below you, your 2 feet,
Yeah,
you know, I didn't average anything less than a minimum of 10,000 steps a day.
that's amazing. Did you see any portly Irish people compared to the United States?
Not really.
Hmm.
Not really.
So we can almost make the correlation that the media has a direct correlation to our health, right?
Right. And like you think about things like their portion sizes are more realistic there. They're actually like you get done with your meal and you're satisfied, but you're not like, oh my God, I need 3 leftover containers.
Mm,
Right. So like eating's controlled, portions controlled, and you're walking everywhere, like on undulated ground that's thousands of years old or
yeah.
cobblestone. And we worry about potholes here or cracks in the pavement, and they're just like, whatever, we're driving on 3,000-year-old rocks.
It's amazing. So much history there too. So much history. So would you like, if you were to go back, what would you like to see that you didn't see?
I would like to experience some of the golf courses over there because they're exquisite. Um, they're a little more expensive, so like that's a planned trip all on its own.
Okay.
But they're meant to be hard, and it's 60 degrees and windy because you're on an island. So like it's not like anything you experience here, except for maybe like a coastal golf course or something. And I think I would probably try to tour some of the smaller towns and
Mhm.
really get into the actual culture of some of what a small town village would feel like.
Okay.
What is it like to go into those spaces? Most of the places we were pretty, I don't want to say commercialized, but they were bigger cities.
Mhm.
And so most of our stay was in Dublin. We spent some time in Galway, which is also a big city, a coastal city on the west coast. Um, but not really any small village type spaces where you could kind of really feel the culture.
Mhm.
And so I would be curious to do more of that because when I was in Europe the last time, which was 24 years ago, that was what I really enjoyed, was doing that, because then you really get to understand the pace people live at. And you have to plan things like stuff shuts down at 5 o'clock
No kidding.
or 7 o'clock. Like if you don't have your stuff, tough.
Really? So there's no Walmart or anything like that staying open late.
No.
There's no 24-hour convenience stores or.
Yeah, I mean, in the bigger, Dublin has some of that, right? Because there's, the city kind of, I don't know, want to say it never rests, but there's always things happening and going on.
Man, that would be fun. So if you were to promote and use media to share that experience with people, what would you use? What would your message be?
What do you mean? Like,
I don't know. Let's say I was from Ireland and I said we need to really get the word out that Ireland is awesome and people should come and visit. I need you to craft a message and a campaign for me,
oh wow, look
for
at
our
you
country.
going
Just,
big,
I know, just like a quick. This is like the.
right? I think, and I think they're actually trying to do this more, and they're trying to attract more tourism because they're really trying to gain more traction as a country. Because one piece of their history is like they lost a whole ton of their, like, millions of their people, either flooding and going away, or they lost it during a big hunger time. I think they're trying to get that back. And I think part of it is just like there's so much to offer in terms of their history, their their music. Their folk music is incredible. It's storytelling. And just telling the story of triumph of what they've come through.
Yeah.
As a country, their country is like, it might be comparable. It was definitely smaller than the size of Texas.
Okay.
The whole island, right? It might be the size of Minnesota. Might be.
Still a good sized state though,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's like an entire country and an entire culture. And even within that culture, there's like 3 to 4 different pockets of like types of people and how they lived. And one really interesting fact I found out, all of their signs over there have everything stated in English, but they also have it stated in Irish.
Okay.
Here's the interesting fact about that. Only about 4% of the population actually speak Irish, and most of them are on the West Coast.
Really?
I was like, because I asked somebody at the airport, I'm like, what language is that? Because it was one I hadn't seen before. And he's like, well, that's Irish. And I'm like, oh, I've not heard of people speaking. He's like, you won't. Go to the West Coast. Only like 3 to 5% of people still speak it and use it.
That's amazing.
Of their history with the English invading from Britain and taking over part of that culture, and English became kind of the language that is of the masses.
Man, that's frustrating. And you think about that too. It's like, you look at the difference in cultures, and what if you just like to speak your own language, and then you just get these people that come in, marauders that want to come in and hijack your stuff and control you and enslave you. And it's, a lot of that stuff is done with media now, right? It's very simplistic. It's a lot easier to do that and to program people. So if you're listening to this podcast, we were just sharing a journey that Jeremy took with his wife Tracy to Ireland, and we're just talking about how the difference in media and stuff like that. But I think we all have that same opportunity to program or share messages, to people, and you can use media for good or you can use it for not so good. So make sure you're responsible with it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Make sure you're responsible with it.
Yeah. Be responsible with it. So doing bad things will bring you bad luck. So talking about Ireland. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap our show. Jeremy, thanks for sharing that today. That's pretty awesome. We should probably, have some more shows like this too, where we're taking a look at, that makes me want to go travel now and say, I'm going to go pay attention to the signs and look and see, like, are all the countries like this or different countries like that? And, I think it'd be kind of a good thing. So
it was really interesting to even just ask locals about those kinds of things, because like, if you're a traveler and you're doing that, please do yourself a favor and talk to the locals, because they take a lot of pride in people asking, because there is an expectation sometimes as a tourist that you're just a tourist. But if you actually take the time to engage and ask, like, they will go so deep with you, and it's a sense of pride, because it's their country and they think of it that way. It's no different than, if someone's going to come to Texas, you're going to be pretty proud to tell them what it's like to live here in Texas and what that's all about and how much bigger it actually is.
That's right. Yeah. Because Texans, especially Texans, be like, oh, hey, you haven't seen nothing yet. Let me show you some.
Yeah.
You could spend 30 days in Texas and still not see all of it. But
not even close.
Same thing for Minnesota, though. But you'd have to really nudge somebody. You'd have to find the friendliest Minnesotan. Yep. So they would tell you, because most are going to be, they're not going to say anything to you. They're not going to tell you where, the beautiful falls are.
Yeah. We like to keep that stuff hidden.
I know you guys are smart, dude. I'm telling you, you're onto something. So we don't need tourism. We have snow. We're good to go. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll freeze you out.
Yeah, that's right. I love it. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. If you're only listening to this in audio, follow us on YouTube, Media Monsters 1111. We'd love to connect with you. And we also have a Facebook group too.
And here, do us a favor today. I learned this yesterday.
Okay.
Do us a favor. Go share this with one person today.
Just one.
Doesn't matter who they are. Just go share it with one person. They might get a laugh out of it, and then they might pass it on. But we ask you as a favor today, just go share this episode with one person, whether you do it in video or audio.
Mm-hmm. And if there's anything we can ever do for you, like, we're pretty nice and friendly guys. Okay. We got one that talks too much and one that you have to nudge a little bit. So it's a perfect blend for any personality type.
We're going to fit you in somewhere.
That's right. In the least, we'll meet you in the middle. So thanks again for tuning in to Media Monsters, and be sure to always stay a media monster.
Rawr.
That's great.